All right, y'all are going to have to bear with me in this video here. I'm going to be kind of bouncing around and jumping all over the place. I didn't really prepare for this video or really make any notes or think about it. I kind of just saw something and now I'm hitting record to talk about it. The SEC needs to go to 9 games. This has gone on long enough. They're on the wrong side of this argument. I want to talk about that in today's video. Before we get to that, I need y'all's help. This is why I don't ever change anything. So I redid the helmet wall, or I started to redo the helmet wall. I took everything down. You remember last year I had them just hanging on the wall on those command hooks or whatever, and a lot of y'all said it looked better with the shelves. So I said, okay, this offseason I'll go back to the shelves. And so when I took everything down, I decided to paint the wall black. Now, I love the black wall. I think it looks great. I'm very happy with the way that came out, the way it looks. The black wall is great. And then I said, well, if the wall is black, maybe I should do black shelves. So I did the one black shelf and hung it up, and I've had it back there now for 2 or 3 weeks. So I've had a chance to kind of soak it in, look at it, all that kind of stuff. At first, I didn't really like the black on black, but after a couple of weeks, it started to grow on me a little. And so this weekend, I decided, okay, it's time to do some more work on the helmet wall. The season's right around the corner. I got to get it finished up before the season starts. And I said, you know what? Before I make the decision on going with the black shelves, let me hang up a couple of white shelves and see what that looks like. And I think the white shelves look good. Am I wrong? So now I don't know what to do. So I need y'all to help me here. Black shelf on the top, the white shelves there. Which one looks, should I go with black shelves or should I go with white shelves? Or should I mix them up somehow? I think the white shelves on that black wall just look better. It kind of pops off a little bit. Am I wrong? This is why I don't change things, because I can't make a decision now. So y'all help me out on the shelves. Black shelves or white shelves, let me know in the comments down below. The SEC's got to go to 9 games. They're on the wrong side of this argument here. Now, for the sake of transparency here, I'm going to tell you right up front, I want 9 conference games, personally, me, for purely selfish reasons. I want more good games to watch. That's it. Nobody likes watching Georgia or Bama or whoever else play Austin Peay or Mercer in the middle of November. We don't even like it at the beginning of the season. Now, we kind of deal with it and put up with it at the beginning of the season because it's just been happening for so long. And, you know, it's a 12-game regular season. We know you're not going to play 12 conference games. You're not going to play 12 Power 4 opponents. So whatever. We kind of just concede that at some point in the first month of the season, and this goes for most teams every year, Big Ten, ACC, everybody, you're going to play some type of lower classification non-conference game. Fine. Okay. But these November games are ridiculous. Now, the 8 versus 9 conference games, the pushback from the SEC and even from some fans within the SEC revolves around strength of schedule and how hard the SEC is. Yeah, the SEC is hard. Big fucking deal. The Big Ten's hard too. They play 9 games. The SEC's got to go to 9. I don't blame the Big Ten at all for sort of drawing a line in the sand when it comes to the college football playoff and saying, we're not giving in to anything the SEC wants in terms of playoffs if they're going to stay at 8 conference games while we're busy playing 9. Now, I've heard some people say, well, why didn't the Big Ten just go from 9 to 8? Because they're doing it the right way. They're giving fans what they want to see, which is more interesting games. Did you know, how long has Texas A&M been in the SEC? Was it 2011 or 2012? Anyway, they've been in the SEC almost 15 years. Georgia has never played there. While they've been in the SEC. You know, I'm not talking about 50, 60 years ago, some one-off non-con game. I mean, since Texas A&M has been in the SEC for almost 15 years, Georgia has played there 0 times. Not a single time. And that's not the only sort of anomaly in scheduling within the SEC because of these 8 conference game situations. Florida hasn't played at Auburn in 15 years. They haven't played at Alabama in a decade. Texas A&M has never played at Kentucky. Again, in the last 15 years, you can go back and find non-con games from 100 years ago, but in the 15 years since Texas A&M and Missouri have joined the SEC, never mind now adding Texas and Oklahoma, which I'll get to in a second, just going back to the expansion from 15 years ago, adding Texas A&M and Missouri, There are situations for every team in the SEC where there is a certain team where they have not played at that stadium in 10 or 15 years. In the case of Georgia, never. Not one time has Georgia made the trip to Texas A&M. Texas A&M's only played in Athens once. So in 15 years of Texas A&M and Missouri being in the SEC, Georgia's played Texas A&M one time. What are we doing? What is the point of having teams in the same league if they never play each other? They're not even really in the same league if they're never playing. And now you add Texas and Oklahoma. So you've gone from 12 teams to 14 teams to now 16 teams, yet you're remaining at an 8-game conference schedule. What makes it even more ridiculous is that half the teams in the SEC have 2 or 3 teams that they have to play every single year because of old traditional rivals. And look, I'm all for that. Tradition is one of our favorite parts of college football, and we've lost a lot of the tradition that we loved about college football over the last 10 years or so. I don't want to lose more. So again, using Georgia as an example, you know, Georgia's going to play Florida and Auburn every year. They just are. Georgia and Auburn is the oldest rivalry in the SEC. It's the oldest rivalry in the entire southern United States. Georgia and Auburn have been playing longer and have played more often than Georgia and Auburn. Georgia and Auburn have been playing longer and played more often than Alabama and Auburn. They've played often and played longer than Georgia, Florida. Georgia Tech, whatever you want to look at. It's the longest running rivalry in the southern United States, period. Georgia's going to play Florida every year. They've been playing every year. It's a neutral site game. It's a top 10, top 5, top 10 rivalry in all the college football. The game's not going away. You take Alabama. They're going to play Auburn every year. They're going to play Tennessee every year. You can go around the league, and Texas is going to play Oklahoma and Texas A&M every year. Okay, that's 2 of the games every year taken for a lot of these teams, and it only leaves 6 more teams you can play out of the 16 in the league. So it's going to take 8, 9, 10 years at this rate, at a minimum, for every team in the league to play a home and home with every other team in the league. It's absolute insanity. So there are a lot of different ways to look at this thing as far as the SEC going from 8 to 9. And I'm going to get to the counter arguments in a minute. The arguments against 9 games, the arguments that you hear in favor of keeping the 8-game schedule. I'm going to get to that. I'm making my case first for the 9-game conference schedule. You cannot keep adding teams to a league, but keep playing the same amount of league games. It's just mathematically impossible. You just can't do that. What is the point of having a team, 2 teams in the same league if they're never going to play? It just doesn't make any sense. The 3-6-6 model solves every scheduling problem in the SEC, every single one. It protects up to 3 traditional rivals that can still be played every single year. So again, to use Georgia as an example, in a 3-6-6 model, you play 9 conference games a year. 3 of the conference games that you play are the same every year. So in Georgia's case, they would play Auburn every year to protect that rivalry. They would play Florida every year. So they'd play Auburn and Florida. That's 2 teams that they would play every single year. Pick a third team. I don't care who it is. Some would say Tennessee, some might say South Carolina, whatever you think sort of the third team that Georgia should be playing every year. I don't care who it is. 3 teams they would play every single year, all right? They then would play 6 other SEC teams. That would get you to a 9-game conference schedule. You'd play your 3 permanent opponents, and you'd play an additional 6 teams. That leaves 6 other teams that you did not play that year, okay? So the following year, you play those 6 teams. Every other year, you will have played every team in the SEC. In year 3, you go back to the schedule you had year 1, but you flop the home and away. So for example, Georgia would play its 3 permanent opponents in year 1 and 6 additional opponents. Let's say one of those opponents was Texas A&M on the road at College Station. In year 3, they would play their 3 permanent opponents, and they would play Texas A&M in Athens. So, to summarize, 3 permanent opponents, 6 other teams, 9-game conference schedule. That leaves 6 teams you don't play. Year 2, you play those 6 teams. So in every 2-year period, you will have played every team in the league. Year 3 and year 4, you flop the home and away games. So every 4 years, you will have played every team in the league home and every team in the league away. You would have a 4-year rotating schedule. It would solve this issue of Georgia and Texas A&M being in the same league, kinda. I mean, they're really not. Georgia has played Clemson, 6 times since Texas A&M joined the SEC, but they've played Texas A&M once? Why have we played Clemson 6 times, but Texas A&M once? It doesn't make any sense. Why has Florida not played at Auburn in 15 years? Why have they not played at Bama in a decade? Why has Texas A&M never played at Kentucky? Again, in the last 15 years since Texas A&M. I know you can go back 50 years and find those. I'm talking about a league game in the last 15 years. Why? Why? Because we have 8 conference games. That's why. That's why. There's no way to schedule it otherwise without going to the 9 conference games and protecting the traditional rivals. You know, you have to ensure that Alabama is able to play Auburn and Tennessee every year. You have to ensure that Georgia is able to play Auburn and Florida. You have to ensure that Texas is able to play Texas A&M and Oklahoma. Because of that, you end up with these situations where Georgia hasn't ever played at Texas A&M. It's complete insanity. You went from 12 to 14 to 16 teams, and you stayed at 8 conference games. All the while bragging that you're the best conference in the land. You're the best conference in the country. We can dominate anybody. We're great. We're amazing. We're the best thing since sliced bread. I agree. The SEC was the best conference in the country for a 15 to 20 year period. There's no doubt or no question about it. I don't think it was because they were playing 8 conference games instead of 9, but apparently a lot of you do. A lot of SEC fans must think that, because now there are SEC fans that don't want to go to 9 conference games. It'll be harder. It's 1 extra loss a year. It's 9 extra losses a year for the league. Who gives a shit? Well, who cares? Win your games. This is complete insanity. It is complete and utter insanity. It's good for college football. It's good for the fans. None of us want to watch these games against Austin Peay in November. Give us another conference game there. Yeah, eventually some team that is borderline playoff material is going to lose a conference game in November that used to be an FCS game and maybe knock themselves out of the playoffs. I don't give a fuck. Don't lose the game. I mean, this is crazy. And they say, well, an 8-game SEC schedule is harder than a 9-game Big Ten schedule. It depends on the schedule. Some Big Ten schedules are harder than some SEC schedules. Some SEC schedules are harder than some Big Ten schedules. I mean, that's just the way it is. You're never going to create some sort of situation where all 130 teams have the exact same strength of schedule. What are we doing? What are we doing? I just don't understand it. We need a uniform structure in college football. We love to bitch and moan and complain about every single poll or ranking that comes out, or the playoff committee rankings, or who they put in and who they didn't, and they're not taking strength of schedule seriously enough. That argument, particularly from Alabama fans last year, is so ridiculous. You didn't miss the playoffs because you lost to some really tough SEC team. You lost to fucking Vandy. You lost to the worst Oklahoma team in 25 years. This idea that the SEC schedule is hard and Bama didn't get credit for that. Yeah, you did. You finished ranked ahead of Miami. Miami had a better record than Bama. But Bama was ranked ahead of them. Why? Strength of schedule. There were all kinds of teams that had 2 losses that ended the season ranked 16, 17, 18, 20. Bama was ahead of all of them. Why? Strength of schedule. You got credit for your strength of schedule, but you lost to Vandy and Oklahoma. It's not like you lost to Texas and Tennessee and Georgia. Well, you did lose to Tennessee. It's not like you lost to these juggernaut teams in the SEC. You lost to a couple of fucking yard turds. What? I mean, it's just the wrong year and the wrong losses for Alabama to be making that argument. Okay? How many Big Ten teams finished with 3 losses a year? A lot. Illinois last year was 9-3 in a 9-game conference schedule. I haven't heard a single Illinois fan or Big Ten person for that matter going, oh man, you know what? We need to go from 9 conference games to 8. That way Illinois could have got in the playoffs because they maybe would have only had 2 losses instead of 3. No, they don't make that pussy ass argument. That's a loser's argument. They don't do that. Why do you do it? We beat our chest about the SEC and then hide behind how hard it is as an excuse not to play 9 games. And again, yes, not playing 9 SEC games will be harder than playing 8. That's common fucking sense. That's the same is true for the leagues that aren't as difficult. Take the ACC. The ACC plays 8 conference games. That's harder than if they played 7. Like duh. Yes, we know. Yes, it will be harder to play 9 conference games than 8. Just like it's harder for the Big Ten to play 9 conference games than 8. But this thing that, oh, well, you know, we're the SEC, we're better than everybody else, and our 8 games is better than anybody else's 9 games. That's simply not true. I've showed y'all Wisconsin's schedule a million times this offseason, okay? In the month of October, 4 weeks in a row, they play Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, and what's the other one? Iowa or something. They play 4 of the toughest teams in the country 4 weeks in a row without a bye week. There's nobody in the SEC, including Florida, that's got a 4-game stretch like that Wisconsin has. Haven't heard a single Wisconsin fan or Big Ten fan standing around going, man, wish we played 8 conference games instead of 9. Then instead of having to play Oregon in week 7 in the middle of the season, we could play Austin Peay. Haven't heard any Big Ten people trying to make that claim. None. Maybe because they're not giant fucking pussies. They're not scared of a 9th fucking game. I'm not scared of a 9th game. Georgia's going to make the playoffs some years. They're going to miss the playoffs some years. That's the case for just about every team in the country. Okay? This whole 8-9 game thing, hiding behind 8 games, it's time to end. We need uniformity. The Big Ten and the SEC are pretending like they're kind of in charge and they're above everyone else. Okay, well then fucking get in line. Play 9 conference. You know, sit down with the Big Ten. Come up with some kind of agreement here. You know, okay, 9 conference games and at least one other Power 5 opponent. That would be an improvement because, look, I'm not on here just to suck the taint of the Big Ten. The last 2 national title winners, Ohio State and Michigan before that, played 9 Power 4 opponents in the regular season. That's it. They played their 9 conference games. They didn't play a single other Power 4 opponent. Ohio State last year had 3 non-con games. They were all lower classification schools. Michigan 2 years ago, 9 conference games. Their 3 non-con opponents were all lower classification schools. Georgia, on the other hand, who won the national title the 2 years before that in 21 and 22, played 10 Power 4 opponents in the regular season in each of those seasons. So yeah, they only played 8 conference games, whereas the Big Ten played 9, but they played 2 Power 4 non-con opponents in each of those years. Oregon and Georgia Tech in 1 year, Clemson and Georgia Tech in another. You know, Georgia Tech's not any good. Well, neither is Purdue or Minnesota or Northwestern or Rutgers or any other handful of Big Ten teams. Yeah, there's shitty teams everywhere. That's an in-state rival. Georgia's going to play them every year, no matter how good they are or no matter how bad they are. That game's going to get played. So that's 9 Power 4 opponents Georgia's playing a year, even if the SEC stays at 8. So every single time Georgia plays one of these Clemsons or Oregons or North Carolina before that in week 1 early in the season, that means Georgia's playing 10 Power 4 opponents in that season. And I like that. I like seeing Georgia play different opponents non-con from year to year. I like playing Georgia Tech. Obviously, it's an in-state rival. I don't want that game to go away. I also don't want that to be the only non-con opponent Georgia ever plays is Georgia Tech. I like seeing Georgia play early in the season against some of these other teams. Like I said, whether it's Oregon, Clemson a bunch of times we played, North Carolina. We played a home and home with Notre Dame in the late 2010s in 2017 and 2019. Georgia's not one of these teams that ducks and runs from big early non-con games. Now, this season, Georgia's got 3 yard turds in the non-con in addition to Georgia Tech. They don't have the big early season non-con game. And, you know, we can argue about whose fault that is and why. It's basically conference expansion. They were supposed to play UCLA. The game got canceled because of conference expansion. So am I happy about that? No. I've got nothing to look forward to as a Georgia fan until week 3. When Georgia plays on the road at Tennessee. Georgia's first 2 games, again, are against 2 yard turds. Just terrible. I mean, I'm not. Is there any Georgia fan looking forward to the first 2 games of the season? I mean, wouldn't you much rather be a Texas or an Ohio State fan and have spent all offseason looking forward to one of the biggest matchups in all of college football this year, Texas and Ohio State? And again, not shitting on Georgia. I'm trying to do my best in this video to show that I understand the argument from both sides, okay? You need to have a similar set of rules, I think, amongst all the Power 4 leagues. But at a minimum, you got to have it between the SEC and the Big Ten, who are pretending that they're over and above everyone else, okay? You got to have 9-game conference schedule. And then in return for that, the Big Ten has to mandate that their teams play 1 Power 5 non-con a year. That would be the trade-off. Again, Ohio State and Michigan, the last 2 national title winners, in each of the last 2 years played 0 out-of-conference Power 4 opponents. Now, some of that is the same reason that the Georgia-UCLA game got canceled. So I'm not saying that's why they won the Natty. I'm not saying they even did anything wrong. Schools are free to schedule who they want, which is another issue, but that's a bigger, broader issue. You need a college football commissioner. You need somebody in charge of college football. Schools should not be allowed to schedule their own games. It's insanity. I've made an hour-long video about all the changes I would make to college football if I was in charge, and I spent 20 minutes talking about scheduling. The brief thing I would do there, 9 conference games across the board. You have to play at least 1 other Power 4 opponent. I would prefer 11 Power 4 opponents a year out of the 12 games. And the schools would not be allowed to schedule those Power 4 opponents. There would be a scheduling commission that would schedule games each offseason. No more to scheduling games 10 years in advance just so they can get canceled 5 years before the game gets played. It's ridiculous. Every year around March, the scheduling commission would look at last year's records, how teams finished, and they would match teams up in the regular season the following season based off how they finished the season before. So if you were the 7th best team in the SEC, you're gonna have a non-con game against the 6th, 7th, or 8th best team from the Big Ten or the ACC or the Big 12. That's how I would do it. The only game the schools would be allowed to schedule on their own would be 1 lower classification school, either Group of 5 or FCS. Because you have the argument, well, we got to play the FCS team because we pay them a lot of money, and without the money we give them, their program would fold. Okay, socialism, communist. You can schedule your game against Helen Keller U if you want and pay them $1 million. You can still do that once. The rest of the schedule is out of your control. It'll be done for you. But anyway, the SEC is on the wrong side of this. You got to go to 9 games. I agree with the Big Ten stance here. I would not give in to any demands to the SEC in terms of the postseason. That's what's going on. Maybe I should have stated that at the beginning. You know, there is no college football playoff next year as of right now. This is the last year of the college football playoff. There is no agreement for a college football playoff beyond this season. It's up to the SEC and the Big Ten which direction we go into playoffs. That's already been established and decided. The ACC and the Big 12 gave up decision-making authority to the SEC and the Big Ten. So what has to happen for us to have playoffs going forward after this season? The SEC and the Big Ten have to agree on the playoff format. Right now, they can't agree. The SEC wants one playoff format. The Big Ten wants another. And the Big Ten is saying to the SEC, we're not giving in to what you want playoff format-wise until and unless you go to 9 conference games, and the Big Ten is right and the SEC is wrong. Give the fans more good games. Stop hiding behind strength of schedule and conference pride and play 9 conference games. Texas A&M's been in the SEC 15 years. Georgia's never played there. Fix it.